because Mike Waltz is freaking out. Matter of fact, no. The United Nations is freaking out over President Trump and his extraction of the president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, and his wife. Matter of fact, let me just tell you all about that. Give me a second here. I got my coffee cup. I'm doing the right things. I'm looking for Sasquatch. But let me say it. If you're over 40 and you're planning to retire someday, the window to protect what you've built may be smaller than you realize. Matter of fact, here's a question most people never ask. Is your portfolio built for what is coming next? Many investors in their 40s and 50s have discovered that they have little to no experience in precious metals. That means that their savings are largely tied to the markets, to the policies, and to the paper assets with very little protection if conditions change, and they probably will. So as retirement, moves from someday to on the horizon, what you need to do is take a look at how your savings or your retirement funds or your 401k is structured. You may want to roll that 401k into a gold or silver IRA. That's right, gold, a biblical currency. And at Noble Gold, they will come in and they will help you understand how you can purchase physical gold or silver or roll that 401k into a gold or silver IRA. They've been doing it a long time. Colin Plume knows what he's doing. He's got a great team. Guys, just click on that link below the video. Just go right now to www.pastorpaulgold.com. That's www.pastorpaulgold.com, or call him on the phone at 877-646-5347. You'll be glad that you did. All right. So do you have your coffee cup? You can get these cups. This is the Paul Begley Prophecy Cup. There you see it, the cross and the cup. And of course, Are You Serious Boulevard is back with Jesus Saves Way. It's all on the great conversation piece. And you can have your cup of coffee with me every morning, like you should be doing. Are you serious? What's wrong with us? It's awesome. All right. So Mike Waltz, who is the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, he told an emergency meeting of the Security Council of the United Nations that there is no war against Venezuela or its people. He said the United States was not occupying a country, but he described that the raid was to seize Maduro and his wife, Cilia Flores, as the law enforcement operation, and rejected accusations by some other council members that the U.S. actions could destabilize the region. Quite the contrary, Waltz is saying. This is how you bring security to the regions of the world where there are bad actors. Maduro's son, Nicolas Maduro Guerrera, is president in Venezuela's National Assembly. Today, the younger Maduro has been a lawmaker since 2021. He is in charge, along with his father and his stepmother, in a newly unsealed indictment in the United States, where he is referred to as Nicolosto or the Prince. There was an empty seat behind the name tag for his stepmother, Cilia Flores, a lawmaker who was seized by the U.S. forces along with her husband, the elder Maduro. So right now, and this was just minutes ago, Waltz is telling the world, why is everybody freaking out? Okay, this is how you stabilize. Now, while this has all been going on, there's the Security Council is meeting right now at the United Nations, and not only is Venezuela sitting right there at the table, but not only is everybody there for the Security Council, also 12 other nations have asked to speak. Most of them are South American and Central American nations. So with this going on, Delcy Rodriguez, a leftist, a socialist, really a communist, and political confidant of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, has suddenly become the country's interim leader. And she is in a very delicate situation. pitted between the Trump administration in Washington, what says it expects Mrs. Rodriguez to cooperate with, and a Venezuelan public that deeply distrust American influence. But not all. A lot of the Venezuelan public is happy that Maduro has been removed and are hopeful that President Trump and the United States will help give their country back from the communists that have really destroyed it. From the days of Hugo Chavez, this Delcy Rodriguez was there all the way, and she's been an attorney, and now she's worked her way to being in the staff of Nicolas Maduro, and now she is the interim leader of Venezuela, although not elected. So you can understand how this is getting very complicated. This is a nation that's being run by communist dictators, authoritarian, that stole all the oil wells from Chevron, from ConocoPhillips, and from other oil nations or other oil companies. So all this is going on right now. In India, where the official response to the U.S. action in Venezuela has been largely muted, much of the news coverage has focused on a little-known connection that the ousted leader Nicolas Maduro had to the country of India. He and his wife had been longtime followers of an Indian spiritual guru by the name of Satya Baba. Several news outlets ran articles that Maduro visited in the early 2000s to the late guru, who had built a very large spiritual empire with branches in over 100 countries. So even though Maduro was the communist leader of Venezuela, he was not Catholic. Actually, he was atheist, and he was getting his spiritual advisement from a Indian guru. Now, the nation of India doesn't really want to talk about that. As a matter of fact, because India was getting and buying some of this oil that was coming from Venezuela. They don't want to make a big deal because they don't want to make any kind of problems with the United States. Okay. China said they are deeply concerned with the removal of Maduro by President Trump. And Russia said they're also deeply concerned. In addition, the United Nations Security Council is holding this emergency meeting on the U.S. raid in Venezuela. Venezuela's ambassador was sitting somber-faced at the semicircular table in the UN chamber with the U.S. Ambassador Mike Waltz also in attendance and speaking. In addition to the council members' countries, including Venezuela, nearly a dozen other countries have requested to address the meeting. Colombia wants to speak, Argentina, Brazil, and of course, Iran. President Claudia Steinbaum of Mexico brushed aside President Trump's warning that Mexico must get its act together on drug trafficking or face possible U.S. action. This is just President Trump's manner of speaking, she said. Nothing to see here. Steinbaum said in a news conference she acknowledged that the White House has pushed for military action on Mexican soil, but said that the problem of organized crime could not be solved with foreign intervention from the Americans. But with about 2 hours until Maduro and his wife Celia Flores are scheduled to be arraigned in the federal court in Lower Manhattan, several dozen people had already gathered outside the courthouse. They were clustered across the street from the courthouse, chanting in English and in Spanish and holding signs that said USA, hands off of Venezuela. And others were saying US out of Latin America. But we're only talking about 23 people. Now, the New York Times is making this bigger than it really is. The thing that they're not showing, besides the 23 people with their little signs in the streets outside the courthouse trying to chant, America's keep your hands off Venezuela, tens of thousands of Venezuelan citizens have been in the streets in the last 48 hours celebrating and chanting away with Maduro. But other people in Venezuela government employees and military families and those from the inner circle have been out in the streets chanting death to America. Now, if you want to know how the oil companies responding today, Chevron, who is the one who really did most of the work in setting up these oil wells and oil refineries and everything, and then had it all stolen by Hugo Chavez and Maduro. Chevron, the largest private oil producer in Venezuela, just saw their stock jump by 5% this morning. ConocoPhillips also saw their stock raise by 5%, and Exxon saw theirs raise by 2%. And the S&P 500 Energy Index, a broad measure of industry, rose. The entire industry rose by 3%. The price of oil only went up by 1%, so it's not freaking out. And at the same time, in other words, America taking control of the oil wells did not cause the price of oil to jump off the charts because the world did not freak out by this. The United Nations freaked out. The Democrats have freaked out. The media is kind of trying to freak out. But the world on oil prices did not freak out. Only thing that happened was stocks of the three major oil companies that are in Venezuela saw a nice, impressive gain because they understand that stability is coming now to the oil industry in Venezuela. Now, the Colombian president, he's a little different. He is upset. He had a sharp response for President Trump. President Trump's comments suggesting possible military action against Colombia drew a sharp response this morning from the president of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, while the country's defense minister sought to emphasize continued cooperation with Washington. After Trump said that U.S. military forces in the Caribbean could be used against Colombia and other countries, and accused Mr. Petro of being involved in cocaine production. President Petro said, if you detain a president my people want and respect, you will unleash the people's like a jaguar, okay? So Tim Waltz has just dropped out of the governor's race? He's out. All right, Paul Jr. just told me this over the tape. Tim Waltz is out. You know why? $9 billion of Somalian daycare fraud that he was, going around bragging when he was running for vice president, bragging how he was throwing tons of money to help daycare in Minnesota. Well, he was throwing tons of money around, but it wasn't helping the daycare centers of Minnesota. It was helping the Somalian cartel crime syndicate global terrorist network that was backfeeding politicians in Washington and no doubt in Minnesota and to terrorist organizations connected to Somalia. And now this $9 billion fraud has been exposed. Tim Waltz is out. He is not going to run for governor of Minnesota because he is dead in the water. And with that, I'm getting a cup of coffee. So there's some hardcore stuff happening. Oh, by the way, Switzerland responded this morning, said that it had frozen the assets of Nicolas Maduro and the ousted Venezuelan leader following his arrest by U.S. forces. Switzerland's governing federal council said in a statement that the action was taken to ensure that no assets are transferred out of the country. And the Swiss government did not say what assets had been frozen, but if legal proceedings revealed that the funds were illicitly acquired through drug trafficking, then Switzerland will endeavor to ensure that they benefit the Venezuelan people and not Nicolas Maduro. Now, in an interview with the New York Times this morning, Colombia's defense minister, Pedro Sanchez, declined to comment on President Trump's threats against Colombia, but Sanchez said that he remained in regular communication with the United States on the counter-narcotics efforts and that the two countries would continue to have a very close relationship. So he doesn't want to ruffle Trump's feathers at all, okay? And he is the Colombian defense minister. So the army in the military in Venezuela is going to go along with the Trump removal of Maduro. They're all going to go along with it as long as they're lady gets to be the leader, and that is Delcy Rodriguez. Okay, so they're afraid. They don't want any part of Trump's pushing back. They're willing to go along with Trump, and that way the country gets stabilized. And so we'll see where we go from here. But obviously, there's but the UN itself, the United Nations Security Council, is freaking out, guys. They're freaking out. I guess the next question is, Tim Waltz has dropped out of the race in Minnesota. The next question is, does Tim Waltz get indicted for the fraudulent? And where did all the $9 billion go? And how many dirty hands got their hands on it, including how many in Washington? We're going to try to find this all out. Stay with us. I'll be busy today, no doubt about that, doing several interviews. And I'm still here in Washington. As you can see, I've gone Sasquatching. Okay. I know he's out here in his woods. I'll be looking for Bigfoot and Littlefoot. I'll be back with more right here on the coming apocalypse. Do you have your coffee cup? Have you got your cup yet? It's at my website at paulbegleyprophecy.com. Are you serious? Are you serious? Are you serious? Are you serious? Is there a way to shut this off? Can I close it?